evening and welcome to the Vigilante Dialogues. I am your host, Shayna Smith, welcoming you to the National Boardroom. It's been a while since we've been here, but we have a very exciting conversation tonight as always. With me, I have persons from the Minimum Wage Advisory Committee that was formed last year in November under the auspices of the Natural Resources Ministry, that we're going to have a conversation about the minimum wage. So we're encouraging you to call in at 499-7815. So that's a correction to the number at the bottom of the screen, 499-7815. So I'd like to welcome our first guest, Ms. Benedicta Samuel, who is the Vice Chairperson of the Minimum Wage Advisory Committee. Good evening, Ms. Samuel.
Good evening, Shana. It's indeed a pleasure to be invited to your show tonight to engage the public in what we consider to be a very sensitive but important national socio-economic issue, and that is the issue of the minimum wage.
Okay. So I was at the BUI Chamber of Commerce luncheon earlier this week, and yourself and Mr. Simon Potter, who's the chairperson, talked about the purpose of the committee, and we completed a survey. So we're going to get into basically the nuts and bolts of what you have been doing over the last few months, and you know what exactly it is that we're trying to accomplish. So let's start with the purpose of the committee. Why was the committee established?
Thank you, Shana. The Minimum Wage Advisory Committee was established in November of 2014, and as you rightly indicated, under the auspices of the Ministry of Natural Resources and Labor. That committee was commissioned pursuant to Section 38 of the current Labor Code. The mandate of the committee is to investigate, compile data and from various sources so that the committee can ultimately present a report or a recommendation to the minister as to what the minimum wage can be.
Okay. When was the last time the minimum wage was adjusted?
The minimum wage was adjusted around 1999,
okay,
which, as one would appreciate, has been quite some time.
Yes.
And the issue or the topic is now overdue for reconsideration.
Okay. So within the labor code, there is requirement in terms of how a review is done, but is there a stipulation as far as how often, or is this something that is up to the Minister of Labor to determine?
Right. The labor code speaks to the issue of, or just authorizes the minister to establish a committee when the minister considers it fit to do so.
Okay.
So to answer your question in brief, no time frame has been set for review of the issue of the minimum wage.
Okay. All right. So what is currently the minimum wage, just so everybody knows for certain?
Well, it's commonly known that the minimum wage is $4 per hour.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So roll out for us in terms of what the committee has been doing over the last few months.
The committee has been very busy. Since its establishment in November of 2014, the committee has convened a number of meetings amongst the committee members. A number of surveys have been done by telephone and by other means. The chairman and other persons have been in direct consultation with certain stakeholders within the community. For instance, the chairman, for instance, has been in contact with some of the hoteliers and restaurateurs. Other people have been in touch with other businesses, especially on the sister islands. There have been efforts to get their feedback and their input. So we have been fairly busy in getting all the data collected, statistics, doing research, academic research, and things of that nature, so that we can present a decent report to the minister.
Okay. So by definition, what is the minimum wage? Because there was an interesting fact that I learned in terms of what is the minimum wage and what's considered a living wage.
Now, the minimum wage attracts many definitions, but I'll just paraphrase what the International Labour Organization has put forward. And they say simply that it's what is paid on a daily, hourly, or weekly, or monthly basis to someone who does work. So that's really remuneration in exchange for work. But it's minimum because it is the lowest pay that an employee should receive from his or her employer.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's within that particular jurisdiction. So, because what I'm trying to get at is, I know for some persons, you know, we look at or we hear about what the minimum wage may be in the USVI or in the US, but the minimum wage is not necessarily a uniform thing across jurisdictions.
No, of course not. In fact, in the US, President Clinton had authorized the various states to establish its own minimum wage. But prior to that, a federal minimum wage existed, which I think is now $7.25 for the US. But of course, I'm sure that the chairman, Mr. Potter, will be able to give the audience some more statistics as to what the minimum wage is in various other jurisdictions.
Okay. Okay. So if you would like to call in, join into our discussion, the number to call is 499-7815. Let us know your views, your thoughts, your suggestions, whether we should increase the minimum wage, what it should be increased to. You can propose that. And, you know, what factors should be considered as part of that adjustment. So, Ms. Samuel, what else would you like to share with us as far as, you know, the work that committee has been doing?
Well, the committee has also been engaging the public by way of public meetings. We have had a meeting at the Rotown Cultural Center, and then we went over to Virgin Gorda, where we had some interesting discussions. We also had the meeting with the Hotel and Commerce Association. And as I said, we have just been engaging various stakeholders
in terms of collecting the data.
In terms of collecting the data. And it is important, even for fora such as this one, it is important to hear what the public in general has to say on the topic. So we want to engage them in the dialogue. We want to hear their views. We want the public to take full ownership of this process. And so we are encouraging them to participate fully in the discussion.
Okay.
Yes.
One of the points you were talking about in your presentation was about the poverty law and the minimum wage. You want to touch on that a little bit?
Well, the context in which that was said was that I was trying to summarize the legal history of the issue of the minimum wage.
Okay.
And without going into too much detail, the issue of the minimum wage was started, the whole legislative process started in around 1890.
Okay.
In places like New Zealand. Under those pieces of legislation, the issue of the minimum wage was not specifically dealt with. They dealt more with conciliatory measures by which issues relating to labor disputes and so on could be addressed. That trend was adopted by other industrialized countries such as Australia and the UK and the US.
Okay.
The history for those we can go into later, but suffice it to say, they all adopted later on the whole minimum wage law.
Okay.
Now, minimum wage law is simply the collection of laws that deal with the minimum wage, the payment of the minimum wage, especially for the fiscally impaired persons. I should also make the point that, as you mentioned earlier, the minimum wage should not be interpreted as being one and the same thing as what is called a living wage. What is the distinction? A living wage is that amount of money that one should earn so as to have the basic comforts of life. A minimum wage, on the other hand, is the wage which after consultation with the public and with other stakeholders, the government determines is a wage that should be adequate enough for a person to survive, to protect his basic human existence. Yes.
Okay. So with the relation to the poverty law now, what does that address?
Well, poverty law, again, represents that amalgam of statutes, case law, and common law that deal with poverty.
Okay.
The issue of poverty is an interesting one. The World Bank has tried to define poverty. And in the process of trying to define poverty, it was determined that, look, let us allow the poor themselves to determine what poverty is. And the explanations that were given, again, were quite interesting in that they said, look, we are poor because we have to work for somebody else, because we don't have food on our table, because we can't afford the basic necessities of life. Those matters, when you put them together, would constitute poverty.
Okay. So it's something where, I guess kind of like in a nutshell, it's about preventing, I guess, a certain person's not being able to take care of themselves in terms of they're working, but then they're not being able to make ends meet, as we say, in that case, because there's a policy in place that keeps the bottom at a point where, you know, it keeps society standard of living at a certain level.
That's right. That's right. I would agree with that explanation.
Yeah, because it really made me start to think while I was filling out the survey, even before you all started the presentation, as far as, you know, is a minimum wage a living wage? Because then I would like to think that you would want persons to be in a position to that when they work, they're able to meet the basic necessities of food, clothing, shelter, and you know, and if you have a family, that this multiple, you know, it multiplies what would be for one single individual. So you want to be able to take care of your family.
Yes, it would be good if both the minimum wage and the living wage could coincide. That would be the ideal position. But then again, in determining both of them, the same factors would be brought into play, because you have to assess what the basic needs of an individual might be.
Within that society.
Within a particular context,
okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, Samuel, we have reached our first segment. I think we've gotten a lot of information out there. Again, if you just tuned in, you're tuned into the Vigilante Dialogues. I am your host, Shayna Smith, and with me I have the chairperson as well as the vice chairperson for the Minimum Wage Advisory Committee. And they're basically winding down their public consultations so they can start the next phase of preparing this, I imagine, a big report with all this information, and make recommendations to the minister as far as what their findings have been and what they think the adjustments will be. So this is a very important discussion. I hope persons are aware of this, but if this is the first time that you are hearing that we have been discussing the minimum wage and adjusting it and what it should become, feel free to call in at 499-7814, 499-7814. So we're going to take a quick break from our sponsors and be right back. Good evening. Welcome back to the Vigilante Dialogues. I am your host, Shayna Smith, and with me I have persons from the Minimum Wage Advisory Committee. And I now have joining us the chairperson, Mr. Simon Potter. Mr. Potter, welcome.
Thank you very much, Shayna. I'm glad to be here, and I hope we can have some good dialogue with the general public about this minimum wage issue, which was long in coming, but nevertheless, we are here, and we want your feedback.
Great. So to give your feedback, the number is 499-7815. Apparently, I said it incorrectly before the break. So that's 499-7815. So, Mr. Potter, talk to us.
Okay, I'll give you some information about some of the information that we have gathered as we deliberate. As you heard earlier from Ms. Samuels and Sheena, This project was started since November 2014. It's quite a journey. It started off what we thought was a little thing, but it's heating up to be something big and grand. There's a lot of interest, a lot of concerns. It's an area that will be affecting businesses across a wide cross sector of people. Because the truth is, as was mentioned earlier, the last time the minimum wage was adjusted was in 1999. That it was $3. It went from $3 to $4. And ever since then, it remains the same. What I can do at this point is give you the minimum wage in some other territories to give you an idea. Again, we're looking at different things to decide where we should fall. But lots of these islands, as people always say, you should look at the comparison. The cost of living might be different in some territories, in other different factors. But nevertheless, to give you an idea, here in the Virgin Islands, Tortola, or the British Virgin Islands, minimum wage is $4. In the Turks and Caicos, they just recently came up with a new minimum wage of $6.25. In Anguilla, where there's not an official set minimum wage, but they do pretty much work around a minimum wage of $4.50. In the USVI, it's $7.50. And as Mr. Samuel said earlier, in the United States as a whole, the federal minimum wage is $7.25. And different states are allowed to have different minimum wage. But I can interject one time as well, is that different states we found out have one minimum wage for regular employees and a separate minimum wage for people who own gratuity and tips in the service type industry. And that's interesting. We only have one, and we probably will stick to one until sometime in the future. Then in St. Martin, St. Eustatia, Saba, those islands, it average about $4.89. And the numbers I'm giving you, they all converted back to US dollars. So it's a US equivalent, even though the countries might spend a different currency. In Antigua, it's $3.41. In the Bahamas, $4. In Barbados, $3.13. In Dominica, $1.50. In Jamaica, $1.22. Trinidad and Tobago, $2.36. To go outside the Caribbean a little bit, but Belize could be considered Caribbean as well. Belize, $1.65. In Canada, $8.68. In Hong Kong, $3.87. In India, it's $1.88. In Australia, $13.70. In Japan, $7.40. In UK, United Kingdom, $9.80. And in the US, as you said earlier, their federal minimum wage is $7.25. Again, we have looked at these numbers and we try to deliberate what it should be for the BVI. And the truth is, $4 we think is a bit too low. And the thing is, in our society, if you have people working for $4 an hour, they probably have to do 2 or 3 jobs. And this causes certain ills in the society, where there are people who have to do other things to supplement their income, and there are people who literally do 2 or 3 jobs, and the television end up training the children. And if this is the case, it do breed problem for our society. And we do have certain social ills as a result of such a low minimum wage. So we got to really be realistic and try to get it. You might not get to what a living wage should be, but something more realistic that people can live comfortable and live a better life. And the truth is, we do believe if the minimum wage should increase, people who own the minimum wage pretty much live from paycheck to paycheck. And if they live from paycheck to paycheck, if they get an increase in money, they'll probably spend a bit more money and inject
into the economy.
And the economy can get a boost as a result of this slight increase.
Okay. And I know that's probably one of the main concerns, especially for business persons, as far as seeing an increase in minimum wage as an increase in business expense. But I think in terms of, we have to have a short-term as well as a long-term perspective, because like you rightly pointed out, you know, if persons have an increase in our disposable income, they're able to spend more, which means that the businesses earn more revenue, hopefully in the long term, by doing that.
Yeah, so some businesses which think that they have to pay out more money, but they also might make more money. And as a result, the economy gets a boost. And it could be better for all of us. Because we want to be an up-and-coming society. We think the BVI is one that is equivalent to almost any place in the world. And we got to keep the trend. We can't really fall behind in keeping our wages as low as possible. That's what will happen. Okay, to give you an idea, we look at some statistics from the Labor Department based on work permits And we found out that based on the work permits issued in the last year, there was like 932 people that own less than $5 per hour. Well, $5 or less.
That's 900?
932
Okay.
people. And then we look at Social Security. And Social Security, we had based on total population 18,771. 18,771 people that was recorded within the last year in Social Security.
Okay.
And of that, 782 make $4 or less. 782 people. Then we had our 1,929 that make between $4 to $6.
Okay, we have a call.
Okay, we have a call.
Caller, good evening. Welcome to the Vigilante Dialogue.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I got a question.
Go right ahead.
I'm not explaining, but I'm going to try. The minimum wage, right? Let's say the minimum wage. I personally think the minimum wage should be paid according to the money that the companies make. As an example, a small business. Let's say the minimum wage increased to, let's say $6 an hour as an example. It may be tougher for the small man to pay that, right? As opposed to some of the bigger established companies. So I personally think that the minimum wage should be based on the proven income of a given company. I don't know.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
That I think it would be unreasonable for the small company to be asked to pay huge minimum wages as it relates to like the bigger establishing companies. So I don't know.
That's an interesting thought. The thing is that we all go to the same supermarket, we all go to the same stores. I mean, there's some few exceptions, yes, but some people shop overseas, some shop locally. And we all have a lot of things in common. And if I work for a small establishment with a few people, and I get a much lower salary than a guy who work for a large establishment, again, you're definitely creating, to me, a bit of class difference because you're creating two classes of people. And the thing is, whether you have a small company or a big company.
My thing was, right, it'd be more burden. It would be more burden on the smaller company. Yeah, you understand? I'm not trying to have nothing segmented out. I'm saying it would be a bigger burden on a smaller developing company, as opposed, because there are a number of companies in this territory, right, that can pay far better wages than you guys are allowing these people to get away with paying our people. Yeah, but I don't want to get into that tonight.
Yeah.
That's a whole different topic.
Okay.
Anyhow, have a good evening.
But I'll tell you too, what a large company will say is that they have a large number of employees. And if they pay higher wages to a large number of employees, again, and some large companies do pay close to minimum wage who have large number of employees. And you have, well, there's people, I guess, at the top will be paid much higher because they supervise more people, have more responsibility because of the size of the company. So at the top, they pay probably much higher. But at the bottom, they have some people who are just there and do basic things, and I guess, well, we hope they pay more than a minimum wage. But my feeling is that we need a bit more education in terms, for example, many businesses do not do what I call orientation. And people come on the job and they learn as they go. Whereas if you get them up to speed as quickly as possible, then obviously you can pay them a bit more money because they're up to speed and they can really perform a whole lot better. And it's part of our problem. If we can assess our companies and try to see how we can train our staff, get the performance up, we can afford to pay them a bit more money and they perform better. And at the end of the day, we could probably be better off if they pay a bit more money.
Yeah, in terms of skill development,
Definitely.
Even though there is a minimum wage, the better situation would be that you're paid based on the value you bring to the organization.
Exactly.
So the more skills you have, whether it's in construction or in a supermarket, there's different professions in there that require different skill sets.
And the truth is, a lot of jobs have a lot of routine things. And the faster you get up to speed, the faster you can perform, the better for the company. And the truth is, I tell people, if you're doing the same thing every day, you should look at a way to do it, become better, and do it better, and do more efficiently, and constantly review yourself. And then likewise, the organization, some organization will have certain trends and structure. I know I interviewed a gentleman who said he once worked for Walmart, and as a manager. And I said, as a manager of Walmart, tell me one initiative that you recommend to this company? And he said, at Walmart, they have a policy, everything is well laid out, and you better follow it. That's the way it goes in an organization like that. And if you can get people up to speed in terms of having a proper structure and get them developed quickly, again, you realize that you can pay them better and they perform better, and the company can be a lot better off.
Okay. Along those same lines, this came up also in the presentation to CCHA, where when you guys mentioned about having 2 different minimum wages for persons who earn gratuity, because that's considered as part of their income, versus those that just have a base salary, so to speak. What has been the feedback on that as far as the comments that you've been receiving?
Okay, I think that's one of the most challenging part of this whole exercise. Because I was very shocked, to be honest, to find that many restaurants, for example, might pay minimum wage. And then they say to me, look, like I know one restaurant said to me, I have staff that make minimum wage, or that's the base pay. But if you look at the total pay for a year, they may make $28,000 because of the tips and the gratuity that they make. And then they might get certain other tips that go straight in their pocket that wasn't even recorded. And they think that's what they pay. I mean, it really brings an interesting dynamic into the picture.
Because for me, it's almost as if you're penalizing them for being a good employee. You know, because if I, as a customer, decide to reward them for the service they deliver to me, that shouldn't cause for the minimum wage in terms of the cost of the employee wage to the business owner to kind of like be taking that into account. So I think that's an unfair situation. When I heard the discussion, I kind of like, really? So, but yeah, that's what I earn. So I don't know. I guess, you know, if there are persons that work in the service industry, you want to weigh in on this, give us a call, 499-7815.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, we know for a fact that many states in the United States have 1 minimum wage for regular employees and 1 minimum wage for people who make these service charge and gratuity. And I mean, it was even said to us that some people have a living maid, and they live in the house, and they eat in the house, and they fed and shelter and everything, and they find they had to pay them more than that. And these things
because these are additional benefits they feel they're getting.
That they get. And so there's a number of different dynamics in terms of coming up with what the minimum wage should be, especially as we have it and we about to come up with one single figure. Where the different factors, I mean, earlier the caller mentioned that small business and big business, but even besides small business and big business, there's a number of factors that really come into effect. But
so it's
but I still want to give you an idea on some statistics to give you an idea. I mentioned earlier, from Social Security records, from 18,771 people, there's like 782 employees that make $4 or less. Then about 1,929 that make between $4 to $6. Give you a total of 2,711 people. Of that, 1,841 are female, which is about 68% of that is female. And 870 is male, or 32%. So it shows right there and then that there's like twice as much female making a lower wage than male. And in the same population base, well, 18,771, give you an idea, of the whole overall population from Social Security, 9,486 are female, or 50.6%. And male is 9,268, or 94%. Well, sorry. 49.4%. 49.4% male. And of the same population with 18,771, of that, 5,256 are BVI landers. That's pretty much our working population based on Social Security records. 5,256 are BVI landers, or 28%. And to give you an idea, some other countries, Vincentians, 1,554, or 8.3%. And Guyanese, 1,532, or 8.2%. In Jamaicans, 1,531, or 8.2%. And then there's some other different countries way in there.
That's part of it, the rest of the balance.
And if I go a little bit further, from Social Security records, we have in the hotels and restaurant industry, there's about 677 people who making below $6 an hour in hotel and restaurant, based on Social Security records. 677 people making below $6 per hour. In the wholesale and retail industry, there's 441 making below $6 per hour. And in public administration, it's like 285. And real estate and associated businesses, 283, making below $6 an hour. And in private household, domestic type employees, 250, making below $6 per hour. What we noticed from Social Security records and even the Labor Department information is that there's quite a number of people on the minimum wage who are hairdressers, nail technicians, barbers. I would think these people are professional in their own rights and would have thought they much higher than minimum wage. But in that industry, the majority of the people make less than $6 per hour. Quite a large majority make less than $6 per hour.
So would that be considered, you think, as a service industry type? In terms of, you know, you go to the barber may have a
pretty much a service industry, and they do
tip.
give tips. I know my wife go to the hairdresser regularly. She says she always give a good tip. That's how it works, because she don't realize that some of them are paid very low as hairdressers and barbers. Yeah, but I go to the barber myself, and I always leave a tip because you realize.
You're aware of that. Okay. Well, Mr. Potter, we're going to take a quick commercial break. Time is running. And when we come back, you share some more stats with us, and we start to wrap up. So stay tuned right after this commercial break. Welcome back to the Vigilante Dialogues. I'm your host, Shayna Smith, and with me this evening, I have the chairperson and vice chairperson from the Minimum Wage Advisory Committee that has been working hard for the last 8 months, almost?
5 months.
5 months. And right now we have the chairperson, Mr. Simon Potter. He's been sharing some very good information with us on this very important topic in terms of the minimum wage, what it should be. We are currently looking at adjusting it. It hasn't been adjusted since 1999, so it's quite overdue. So we're asking you to call in, give us your comments and thoughts on this, 499-7815. So Mr. Potter, you went through the stats in terms of, you know, we have a working population of about 18,000 plus persons, and you guys have basically broken it down in terms of the demographics of where, you know, a large part of that working population falls in terms of between $4 to $6, $4 being the minimum. And we've also touched on some of the social implications of persons having to live paycheck to paycheck or having to work for multiple paychecks, because the cost of living is one of those factors that has to be considered in terms of where we go with the minimum wage, I believe. What work is being done, I guess, whether it's by yourself or another committee, in regards to the cost of living aspect of this?
Yes, we do have a committee working on what we will probably call a living wage. And they looked at a number of factors, what they think what's essential for a person's survival. And they're pretty close. They have a figure, but we did a little more fine tuning before I put the figure out there. But we get them pretty close to what our figure should be. We're not saying that figure will be the minimum wage, but to give us an idea how a person can comfortably live. So that's being worked on as we speak. And a subcommittee of this same minimum wage committee is kind of putting that together. Yeah,
because one of the things that when I was saying on the break, I'm going to move to Australia, because Wikipedia said they have a minimum wage of $15 plus an hour. But again, when we translate it to, you know, what's the cost of living in Australia, you know, it may equate back to the same thing as here in terms of, you know, that money disappears. Just like that, you have more month than money, as we say sometimes.
You know, I like to tell people, one of the easiest things in the world to do is to spend money. You know, money will go if you're not careful. So the way you want to spend it, you want to invest it. You want to invest a little bit as much as possible. But that's another topic for another show.
But I think that's very key, though.
As you mentioned Australia, I met a gentleman who said he have a printing factory in England, and one in New Zealand. And he can print things in New Zealand, have it shipped to the door in England, cheaper. They can be printed in England. And even though they have a pretty high minimum wage over there, because the people work ethics is quite different, a lot more efficient.
So the level of production now
is much higher. It's quite different. Yeah. But we also did a telephone survey, and in the telephone survey, the people we surveyed, and we surveyed people in Virgin Gorda, Jocelyn Dyke, Antigua, via telephone, and based on that survey, about 16%, 1/6 of the people surveyed said they pay the minimum wage. Only 16%. 94% said it should increase. 94% said it should increase. Of who said it should increase, 34% said it should go to $6. That's the figure.
That's the
they put.
figure they gave. Okay.
34% said it should go to $6. 42% said it should go to $5.
Okay.
In others say higher, lower, different range.
Different ranges. Okay.
And we continue to ask them, if it should increase, will there be a reaction to the increase in their business? And 84% said if it's a nominal increase, there should be no reaction to their business.
Okay.
And then there's others who say they might have to lay off, they might have to close, and different things like that. But to give you another interesting statistics, we look at the census, the last census done, a bit outdated, but it's the information we have. And based on that census, we realize that the people in the district and the BVI with the highest household income is the second district. And the next to that, in terms of household income, is the third district.
Okay.
And the third is the first district. So the people in the west of this island seem to be
Doing well.
doing a bit better than the people in the east. And with the lowest is the ninth district, Virgin Gorda and Niagara. The ninth being the lowest of all the families income owners.
And that's interesting because then now when we talk about the different service industry types, Virgin Gorda and Niagara, it's hotels and restaurants.
Definitely.
So that's part, I think that's part and parcel of those types of things. So it's not, I don't want anybody to think, well, there's a different standard of living now in the different districts, but that's part of what it is because now, I live and work close to my job. So if I'm in Anigada, the type of work that's available there, is in the service industry.
Yeah,
and we already heard those stats before saying that, this is between $4 and $6 is but what you're seeing as a trend.
And the truth is, I don't know for a fact how the census was done, but I would believe when people ask you, what's your salary?
Yeah.
You give your basic salary. And if you get the basic salary, all these tips and gratuity doesn't factor in.
Yeah,
so what's reported here might not be your true living
full
income.
thing, yeah.
Right? Which is a possibility. And looking at the census again, the census is a breaker based on household, and single household was like 27.5%. 27.5% of the whole census was single household. With single household with child or children was about 13.6%. Single household with child or children about 13.6%. If there are two families in one house, well, that's different. But with a single household, one child or children, there's about 13.6%. So it's interesting. We have quite a number of single people who there, single household. And if at least two people live in a household, they can share the rent and share electricity and share a number of things. Whereas if they're single, one person has to foot the entire bill. If they got to live on a minimum wage, they just can't. It's impossible. Well,
and live at a certain standard. Because then they go live, but is what type of quality of life?
Well, what a lot of them are doing is having 2 or 3 jobs. And again, they're raising children. Again, the children suffer. Because they just cannot live on that kind of that level of income.
So that's great. So for you, what has been the highlight, or the highlights in terms of whether it's through research or the conversations that you've been having with persons in the community?
Well, definitely, I'm a bit surprised to find that we do have a large number of people owning the minimum wage. And I know it's a minimum wage and people can do it. And I know in some organizations people work with for years and still being paid the minimum wage. And something seems wrong with that picture. Either the person isn't performing or the boss or the whoever's in charge is a bit mean. And I know sometimes people will say, I'm working based on what I'm being paid. And I like to say to employees who say they're working based on what they're being paid. Well, that's why you'll be paid for the rest of your life. You have to show you can do more, and then you should get more.
And that's a key thing, because then in going back to what the caller was saying in terms of, whether small businesses should have a different minimum wage level compared to a large business, that I think if the rule of thumb is that persons are paid based on the value they bring to the organization, then they should have some type of progression in terms of their salary, even if it's that you start off with company A and you leave there and you go to company B. But you have a promotion in terms of your income as far as what your salary was earned. That's a very important thing as far as employee education, that they not accept subservient conditions almost, because it brings to mind where if there isn't a minimum wage, you'll end up with slavery conditions where persons are almost working for free.
Exactly. Because whether people argue about paying a minimum wage, if it was not minimum wage, they probably pay lower.
Because you're trying to maximize profit. So I think that's something where the minimum wage, if nothing else, people walk away with it. It's very important in terms of trying to have some type of basic standard of living for everybody. that regardless of your skill set, that you are being compensated duly for what it is that you do, and that employers now incentivize their workers by paying them fairly and encourage them to progress in their skills.
And in businesses and total in the BVI, we do not pay enough emphasis on training and developing your employees. And it's very important. It might look costly to train an employee, send them off to do some courses, but the truth is, if the employee is properly trained, they give you benefit for quite a number of years.
Yeah, they produce more.
And in the BVI, I notice in the company I work, lots of employees are there for quite a number of years. Whereas in the United States, for example, you don't find that. People
There's a lot of turnover.
There's a lot more opportunity, a lot more turnover. And the turnover to be very small. I mean, I know people from the time I was in school and they work one job and they're still in the same job.
Yeah.
And if you got people like that, had you trained them and they can increase their performance, the training cost will soon be written off over a
you make it back because it's almost as if it's an investment in the company.
It is an investment in the company once the employees stay. I mean, it's a risk the employee might leave. But in life,
if you treat them good, they're going to stay.
You treat them good, they're going to stay. Exactly. So you treat them good, train them, pay them decent, and you have a better company. So happen and trying to pay them as low as possible.
Yeah, that's not going to solve the problem.
It's not going to solve the problem.
Yeah, it's not going to solve
the problem. I mean, a number of people say a salary is not the greatest motivator, and it's not. But it's an important part. And if they're living below a standard that can't live comfortably, then that's a real problem. They have to first get that problem overcome.
And it goes back again to the long-term economic benefit where we talk about, if I'm making more money, then I'm able to spend more in the businesses on goods and services. So, the companies benefit long-term, because I know one of the things, and this is something I hope we guard against, is that when the public service got increments, we used to see an elevation in prices because, 3,000 people just get some more money. Sometimes they only were $50 a month, but, people get this impression that it's this big increase. So I think as businesses, as a business person myself, I'm working with businesses. It's something where we have to keep that long-term picture in view. As far as sometimes we have to do certain things that is of a social benefit more so than the bottom line always being the deciding factor.
Yeah, there are a number of people who are saying if the minimum wages increase, prices will increase. Well, we don't have total control over that. But I don't think it's the case if it's increase a nominal amount. If we double it, for example, then you might see some of that.
That's a big difference.
But you see some differences. But with a nominal increase, I don't think the prices should go up in any business. I think the business owners might realize that they have to get a little more efficient and do things more effective. And sometimes you have to learn to do more with less. And it's possible. And if you really sharpen your pencils a little bit and realize, even though you pay a little bit more, at the end of the day, the employees happier, they perform better, and your company make more money.
And I'm guessing this would be something too that we face, because I know, again, one of the concerns would be about that increased employee costs. But because it's been so long that it has been adjusted, whether I think consideration should be given where it's done in phases. So say maybe over the next 3 years we try to get it to a point so that businesses have time to grow their revenues to kind of compensate for the final adjustment. I don't know. That's just a thought. That's my comment for that.
Well, it's a good idea. It's a good point. But the thing is that we are not a committee here for a couple of years. We just had to do this job and we disbanded. It will be a recommendation that it be reviewed like the next 2 years or something again, because where we like to see it, we realize we can't put it right there immediately. But we have to make a move because it's way too low, and we have to make a step. But it'd be difficult. I know it'd be difficult for some businesses who already set their budgets to really increase at a high level at this stage. So we have to really be cognizant of that.
Yeah, and definitely, and I think we should put that there. That it would be something where the minister signs off on it, and it's like by tomorrow everybody has to change over. But that it would likely be something progressive that's enacted.
You want to give that number?
Okay, the number 499-7815. We actually just about winding down on our hour. But again, if you have any comments, questions for Mr. Potter on the minimum wage, feel free to call in 499-7815.
Okay, I'll just give one last bit of statistics here. We look at inflation from 1999 up until now, and I add all the years together, and I did an average, and the average is 2.94. 2.94%, almost 3%, and that average in most pads is all close to constant 2-3%, with the exception of In 2001, we all know what happened, 911, things went bad. In 2000, then after that, 2002, inflation went only 0.44%. 0.44%. Then after that, it's come back up pretty much 2-3%. And in 2008 was the year before everything went south and we had went into a recession. But that year, the inflation rate was 7.51%.
Okay.
7.51%. And then after that, it pretty much dropped back and it's averaging 3% again, 2 point something, 3 point something percent.
So the inflation then, for persons who may not quite get it, at the end of the day, the bottom line I think is that every year you expect at least 2 cents on the dollar or 3 cents on the dollar in terms of the cost of goods or services within the country. It's kind of like
just to cover inflation.
It just cover inflation. That's typically what inflation, how we feel inflation, I should say, because it's something where we see it as a statistic, but then what that means for us, you know, as a consumer is that basically 2 cents will be added on every dollar in terms of pricing. Now, Mr. Potter, we are completely out of time, but if persons want to contact you or Ms. Samuel with their ideas, comments, suggestions about this, how do they reach you?
Okay, they can call 468-4732. That's the secretary for the committee.
Okay.
Who's Miss Smith? 468-4732 during working hours.
Okay.
468-4732.
Okay.
And she is pretty much assigned to this project as it is right now. And that's Miss Smith. You can, is the secretary for the committee.
Okay.
You can call at any time. She'll be glad to give feedback, answer questions, or record any suggestions. And we'll still be accepting public feedback. We're getting close to the end of the consultation, but we will take feedback up for at least up to next week.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, Mr. Potter, thanks for being here, and I wish you guys well. I'm looking forward to the report. How long do you think it will take to pull it together?
Oh, that's a good question. We hope we can get done in 2 or 3 weeks. Well, once we put the report together, it'll be submitted to the ministry, to the minister. It'll be their document, and it'll be up to them to publish it and make it public.
Okay.
We hope that can be done pretty soon as well.
So we're aware of it. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Great. You've been tuned in to the Vigilante Dialogues. I'm your host, Shayna Smith, and join us again on the Dialogues. We replay on Sundays at 7 p.m. and Thursdays we're here at 8 p.m., not 8 a.m., 8 p.m. Join us as we continue to change the conversation for a better Virgin Islands. Have a good evening.